I'm just in my office, just about to leave work to go back to the flat that I stay in during the week while I'm at work. I just thought I'd do something a bit different and show you this this object. I'll just show you this first and I'll try to explain it in a minute. I don't know if you can catch that. It's an axe handle with some words burnt onto it with a soldering iron. Not really sure what it's not really an art object. I make quite a few bits and pieces like this. It's what I call an epistemic object, and I'm borrowing that term from, or adapting it really from some research that was done a few years ago by Maglio and Kirsch on epistemic actions. An epistemic action is how's best to describe this? But it's an action that they contrast with pragmatic actions. That they're not. An epistemic action isn't an action that fulfills a particular purpose. It's not kind of instrumental. It's not. It doesn't have a purpose in and of itself. It exists just as a kind of aid to thought. The examples that Maglio and Kirsch give, they give two examples actually. One of the examples is drawn from people who play Tetris video game, and if you play Tetris, you'll know that blocks come down from the top, and on the way down you kind of rotate them, these weird little geometric shapes, and you rotate them so that they stack as economically as possible along the bottom of the screen, you know. And Maglio and Kirsch, watching people do that, noticed that that people rotate these blocks as they're moving down because it makes it easier to complete. It makes it easier to understand how the block's going to fit if you do this rotating thing. So the actual action of rotating the block doesn't have an instrumental function. It's not a pragmatic action in and of itself. It just seems to assist the thought process of imagining how the block will fit when it gets to the bottom. The other example they use is chess players, and again, watching particularly novice chess players, a player will typically pick up a piece that they're considering moving, and will try it out in a couple of paces first, without taking their hand off it, of course, because even though the kind of trying out action, the rehearsal of the move, doesn't do anything in and of itself. There's not an instrumental action. It's not pragmatic. It seems to assist with the thought process. It makes it easier to imagine the consequences of that move will be. And the way that Maglio and Kirsch described that, when they refer to it as an epistemic action, is they describe it as kind of outsourcing cognitive activity onto the material world that's outside of the body. I know it's been extended elsewhere to things like writing, taking notes, or counting on your fingers. Different actions which are really part of cognition. They're part of thought. But as I say, they're outsourced or offloaded onto the environment. And just to bring this object up, and as I say, I'm not holding this up as a great work of art or anything like that. It doesn't really fulfil that function for me. But it's just something that I made to kind of outsource or offload some thinking that was going on inside my head onto the outside world, and to give it sort of concrete form for a while. It's an axe handle, and the words that's written on it's in German, you probably can't see this. But it says, "Wenn du weißt, dass hier ein Hand ist, so geben wir dir alles Übrige zu," which is the first line of Wittgenstein's On Certainty. I think it translates as something like, "If I can say here is one hand, I'll grant you all the rest." So it's about, that line in Wittgenstein at least, is about, well for me, it's about the relationship between knowledge, certainty and doubt, and the kind of sense of certainty that comes with handling. That's my interpretation of it. It's not what it meant, but it's something about the significance of the role of the hand and the metaphor of the hand in testifying to the certainty of something, and as a metaphor for knowing something and understanding something and grasping something. So it's partly that. It's on an axe handle because axes feature within a lot of my thinking as tools. They have a kind of Merleau-Pontian, kind of phenomenological sense of the kind of maximum grip, that kind of thing. There's also this kind of to-handness that you find in Heidegger, I think, something like that. There's something very transitive about that, you know, they connect you to the world in a way. So all those kind of, as I say, kind of haptic relationships that you can strike with the world, a kind of knowing through handling, knowing through coping and obtaining maximum grip, for me are represented with the axe. And there's other reasons for axe. I like the axe, the kind of cleaving possibilities of the axe. The axe is the thing that divides and which, it has that kind of relationship. It has that, for me, that relationship between knowing and separating, and knowing and naming, and knowing and defining and dividing and making distinctions. Those kind of things, which cutting and the blow of the axe seems to represent really well for me. So that's this particular epistemic object. The other thing which is really tangential is why there's no axe head on it. It did used to have an axe head on it for a while, but I took it off because I quite like the idea of an axe head, an axe with no head. Partly as a kind of tribute in my thinking really to, what's he called? Oh God, he wrote this book on having no head. It's completely gone. I'll keep talking, it'll come back to me. But it's this idea that it's this 20th century mystic who wrote this book on having no head, about a certain kind of mental state which he associates closely with enlightenment and Zen, in which you imagine yourself without a head, so the world that you inhabit it is your thinking. It is your thinking. There's not the world and then you thinking it. There's just the thinking, and that is your head. I wish I could remember his name was Douglas Harding. Douglas Harding is his name. So that's a small little reminder for myself that in this epistemic object there's a kind of a gesture towards Douglas Harding's on having no head. Kind of